Hi, I'm Schadt, CEO of DoubleHorn. Today I'm joined with Shawn Mastrian of LumiLor. Hi, Shawn.
How you doing?
Good, good. Today we're going to talk about leadership, strategy, and of course LumiLor. So let's dive in. But before we go too far, tell us about the path that got you to LumiLor and a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I graduated from MIT with a chemical engineering degree.
Impressive.
Thank you. And my first job was actually in a management training program. I worked for a company called Leviton. Okay. So I went completely away from chemical engineering. Basically, if I look back at my college degree, it taught me how to think differently, how to think analytically, because you kind of had to think differently in order to survive. The joke I make, by the way, is that since I'm working now with an electroluminescent paint, that I figured out a way to combine a chemical engineering degree and electrical wiring devices 25 years later. So,
really put that MIT to use, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
At some point, eventually, I got back to my education. Yeah.
Right.
So from there, it's kind of my path was a lot of serendipity. I worked for Accenture for a little while, well, way back when it was Anderson Consulting back in the day.
Yep.
Then I went from them doing more technical consulting to IBM doing more business consulting. I was doing some supply chain work for them as well. And that's really when I got my first taste of sales with them. That was always a pathway that I wanted to get down, is to be more of the sales side of the house. You look at where leaders emerge in companies, it's always the sales guys, because you have to drive the company, you have to drive the profitability of the company in order to...
revenue leadership,
So I went from IBM to a small startup, and this was right around 99, 2000 when the first internet bubble was happening. You know, people were getting obscene salaries to go and do whatever and work for companies that may or may not have been viable and do solutions that may or may not have been viable.
That's right.
And then I started going on sales calls. So I was one of the 7 regional sales executives that they had hired because they'd done a little bit of a fundraise, and we were putting people out there. But as it turns out, what we realized was that we were selling a product that people didn't want to buy. We were making a process more efficient, that if you made that process, payables processing, so if you made payables more efficient, then people pay their bills faster.
Right.
And if you're the payee, you're the buyer, you don't actually want that.
Right.
If there's uncertainty in there, it's like, I'm not sure.
There's some inherent conflict, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically what we did was we took what we had. At some point, I became the only salesperson that survived, and then I wound up running sales and marketing for the organization. And so we were able to have some success in there. And then I left from there to go work for, where did I work for after that? I think EMC at the time.
Okay.
We'll call it EMC.
Yeah.
So I go from small company then to a big company, and
as
you know about EMC, maniacal sales force. You know, they're known for that in the industry. So learning from among the best sales people in the industry was a tremendous asset for me. So I was selling a product line, or a service line actually. It was interesting. I was the number 2 guy selling the service line in the Chicago region, which I lived at the time. And I realized that there was enough work for one guy. And Texas was open, and it was available to me. So I came down here, and this is how I moved to Austin.
That was one of the questions I had for you, is how you arrived. Okay.
Yeah. So I moved down here with that job, and had my offering that I had to sell through my sales territory. So I was an overlay rep with them. A lot of great experience in terms of working with that sort of quality sales team. That sort of great products that they had in the marketplace as well. And so my job was to put some great services around the great products that they had in the marketplace, and to drive the business there.
Right.
So did that for a little while, then went to another small company, finally wound up at a cybersecurity company, and at some point I became the CEO of a cybersecurity company.
Okay.
And this was a cool technology. It almost happened. We ran out of money. So the technology.
An important piece.
Believe me, that's a lesson that we'll talk about later, I'm sure.
I know. I understand.
So we had this tremendous technology, but it was transformational, and actually it's a good learning experience for what I have right now. You think cybersecurity and paint don't necessarily have a lot in common, but what we were trying to transform the cybersecurity industry by taking cybersecurity and putting it actually in the microchips themselves.
Okay.
So essentially you could run a system that was compromised with malware and have still control over your system because you knew what the chip was doing.
Right. So it was isolated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of attacks these days. I mean, most of the chips are made in China, and they go into military type operations. It's like, well, that's an inherent conflict there,
Yes.
because you can put all kinds of bonus features in a chip and you would never know that they were there until they get activated, and your malware might not have any idea that that's happening.
Yep.
So you could have backdoors going in there. There's rumors that certain famous attacks were because of backdoors in chips that were just, you couldn't do anything about them.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we had some great relationships going on. We had some good government contracts going on. We just didn't have the runway. We couldn't get it done.
So where'd you go from there?
So that was then I went to LumiLor.
So what did you take most of that? Because the CEO of where you are today is very different than where you started in that journey. Mm-hmm. So what are if you had to kind of pick up 2 or 3 attributes that you picked up along the way that you use most today to be an effective leader?
Mm-hmm. Something that I picked up, an appreciation for in a different functional area, right? Yeah. So as a CEO of a company, you have to have broad understanding of the entire company and how all the pieces interact with each other. So my experience at IBM, we were basically designing business processes for the company. So our job was to take down the functional barriers as a consultative organization and turn it into an enterprise process model so that we could help them to deliver the business with the business objectives as opposed to a functional objective. And then I think that the other piece of it is really understanding what made the one company successful and what made them not successful.
Yep.
So working for big companies, there's a big company perspective, and there's way big companies do things, and there's way little companies do things as well.
Yeah.
They don't always mesh with each other.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. But at one point, the big company was a small company.
Exactly.
You know? And what's the breakthrough? And then what did they lose along the way? What did they pick up? And like your security firm example.
Exactly.
You probably learned a lot there, I would imagine. Failures, you learn a lot more than your wins usually.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the value of patience and understanding that you have a long-term contract. Sometimes that's what you have to do. But if you understand that you're going to have a long run in transforming a marketplace, then you have to have the patience to do that, and you have to gear your resources to be able to deliver that.
Yeah, I always say you got to finance your expectations.
Exactly.
You have to, and which is hard to do when patients start running thin or skill sets aren't around, or the market changes.
Oh, exactly.
The competitive landscape changes, but it's a marathon for sure.
It is. Well, that's where you really have to understand at every level. You have to have a mature outlook on what your sales are, and that's all the way through as I started getting into business development, maturely understanding what your chances of success are, how your product pathway, your go-to-market pathway for the product. Because a lot of the products, even at EMC, I was selling a newer product for them, right?
And think about how hard that is to forecast. I know I've done that in my background before. I deal with it hands-on here as well. It's tough.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough. I mean, you got somewhat of a crystal ball and some consistency, and you got to drive the company based on that.
Well, that's exactly right. I have this conversation with my my VP of marketing all the time. It's just like, all right, we need to have a forecast so we understand where our money's going to be coming from.
Right.
And he's just like, well, how do I do that? We don't have any history. We don't know where this is going to go. It's like, it doesn't matter that we don't know that. We have to figure it out.
Right.
And we have to figure out a way to do that in a disciplined manner that's realistic and believable, because if we get that wrong, we make missed expectations in the marketplace, our investors get upset with us, and then we have a chance of running the company to the ground.
How do you identify leaders now? And when do you know you kind of have one? What are some of those attributes when you go, I need to get my hands around this person? Obviously you want to develop all your employees. You want to treat people fairly in every way possible, high integrity. But the reality is some folks just, they got a little shine to them, you know, or they're comfortable in their spot. How do you treat those situations?
I think it's really about giving people white space, right? If I tell people how to do their job every single day, you press them down, and there's always a balance that I strike between that I strike in my mind, and that is being too authoritarian and too liberal with what they do. People love an org chart. People love having roles and responsibilities and defined tasks on a daily basis, and I get that.
Ever since children, that's the way we were raised.
Exactly.
Just to have rules and paths and so forth.
Exactly. But I think as a small company, though, that kind of gets in the way of innovation, right? Because really, to get from a small company to a medium company, you have to innovate. You have to break down barriers, and you have to have that willingness to just go through a wall if you have to in order to do what you need to do.
Yep.
And the people that will run through those walls are the people that are, that take you to the next level. Now, it's interesting, though, as you transition from small company to a medium company, things change a little bit because we're kind of in that transition zone right now. And it's a little difficult for us to do the transition because you need a little bit more of that structure and responsibility around there, but you still need to give people white space so that they understand that there's an opportunity for them to lead.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you hire somebody to do a job and then you see where they have skills to do that and they have passion, and the pieces solve themselves like the Terminator. He kind of like melds together and puts himself together. Then where that structure doesn't work, the people that are real leaders in the organization will fill those gaps and come in, and you'll know that those are the people that...
Well, they'll see it. You use the key word, passion. They'll see it as an opportunity.
Yes.
Is they're not going to run from it. And that's the same thing that I've seen as well. Those people gravitate towards those voids as an opportunity to get further along. What about yourself, leadership? What do you do to keep sharp and find mentorship?
Well, I think the first thing that I do is I try to keep my ego in check. I accept criticism because I think that's natural, that you have to listen to criticism in order to understand what you're doing. If there is something that is wrong, we need to talk about it, and people need to be comfortable enough to be able to talk to me and say, hey, there's something wrong here, and we need to go through that.
Right.
And so I think that having a sense of humility on it, and also I have to take the blows,
Absolutely.
If something ugly is happening there, it's my fault. I have a friend of mine that I used to work with at IBM, and she told me this great story, and it's fat. Love it. She goes into a meeting, and everyone sits around there blame storming, right? It's like, oh, whose fault is that? And she sits on the table.
Blame storming, I like that.
Blame storming,
yes.
Okay. And so she sits on the table, it's like, look, it was my fault. I screwed it up. It's my fault that went haywire. Now that we solve that, let's go actually solve the problem.
Right. Let's get back to the real reason we're here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, everything is, as a leader, everything is my fault.
Yeah.
That's fine. Let's do that. Now that we've understood that, let's go ahead and solve the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
And you really shield everyone from having to worry about that. I mean, that's the way I've always looked at my role in a lot of ways, is you're trying to get obstacles out of the way.
Right.
And sometimes trying to figure out who's wrong is an obstacle.
Absolutely.
Just take it. You fall and soar and you keep going.
And the mistakes sometimes happen because we really don't know where we're going, right? It's like we have something that's innovative and new, and we're all trying to figure it out, and we're trying to grow into this medium company, and we're trying to expand our markets and trying to have different conversations with people, and you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's how you respond to the mistakes is the challenge, right?
Yep.
So always have a solution at hand. Don't worry about what the problem was, and then figure out, okay, this is what happened. Always analyze the problems, be humble about it, and if you need to change what you're doing, you need to change what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that comes in everything. That comes in product development, that comes in, shop floor operations, that comes in sales and how we go to market with our sales strategy. And if you start looking and asking those questions and understanding what resources you really have and where the investments are that you want to make in your company, you start seeing that there's a mismatch between your strategy. It's like, well, okay, we want to have all these direct sales people out there and sell a product directly and get the highest margin possible in everything that we do. And then we start looking at it, it's like, okay, well, in order to do that, we'd have to have this massive customer support organization. Then we'd have to have a sales force that was in India and that was in China.
There's a whole cause and effect, thing that goes off. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like, well, that's not a sustainable model because if you look at, we sell paint, but it's really a SaaS model if you think of it that way. So what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to sell paint, we're trying to generate repeatable customers. And a repeated customer needs service and support, and you need to care and nurture them, and you have to continue to deliver their products, and you also have to deliver a product that is transformational to their business as well, that they can build off of. So if you look at our core values, create a quality product that allows them to do everything that we say that it can do, that a consistent, long life, repeatable process. Okay, so maintain the quality of the product and maintain the reputation of the brand as well, because the brand and the product are together.
They go hand in hand.
Exactly. A customer is making an investment in us. It's making an investment in our brand and in our company, and we owe it to that customer to give them the support that they need so that they can build a business around that product.
Right.
Because this has the ability to transform a business by providing a differentiated service to your customers. And
so it's that reoccurring nature that's
exactly right.
The subscription kind of error model effect is what you're feeling coming through to your company.
We want to get to it be our subscription model, and that's exactly right. And so that's where we have agents that are out there that find those people, and you have to manage those people so that it becomes a subscription model. The economics are there. I mean, there's obviously
the economics are there, and let me tell you, the reoccurring revenue model is a wonderful thing. That's what since inception, we've been on a reoccurring revenue model, but you hit on it. The service and support have to be just centric, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, because if they're not, it's not going to be reoccurring.
Absolutely.
I mean, your people aren't going to renew agreements with you year after year after year, or month to month, if you're not giving them the service. So those go hand in hand, absolutely.
That's correct. Part of the challenge of the world today is that you're global whether you want to or not. Yeah. And so we had people all across the globe that were buying our product, which created a tremendous amount of stress for us, because we couldn't say we're just selling in the U.S. because then competition comes in and say, you know what, you're just selling in the U.S. We'll take the rest of the world if that's okay with you.
Right.
Right? And we have patents, and the people that are doing that are ripping us off. But what happens is when those people get a foothold in an organization, they sell a cheaper product that doesn't support the customer's business objectives, and then giving them the opportunity to do that uncontested allows them to define what the product is in the marketplace.
Right.
We want you as a manufacturer to be able to develop products that are transformational using our product. But if we don't provide that exceptional service and we don't have the people that can get to that, then we're not doing what we want to do as a company. We're not protecting the brand, and we're not delivering the product that we want as a company. The concept of LumiLor was invented in 2009 by my good friend Andy Zinko. Andy unfortunately passed away about 3 years ago, so he unfortunately isn't along for the ride anymore. But he was the guy that made this happen, and he was kind of he was the mad scientist type.
Awesome.
He loved to tinker, and he was, it was because I remember he came to me and we were talking, and he's like, oh yeah. He showed me his motorcycle he did with a glow-in-the-dark paint, because he was a painter by trade, but he was a really smart guy. He was one of the smartest guys that I knew. He had this bike that was he painted his glow-in-the-dark. It was beautiful. It looked like a nice bike. And he said,
like a chopper bike? Like, is that what you're talking about?
Like a motorcycle,
okay,
yes.
Okay, yeah.
But he was disappointed in it because he couldn't control it. So his mission was to control the paint. And he always would say, after a six-pack of beer, I got the basic concept of it, and then after another six-pack, I figured out.
I forgot it.
It's like, so he was doing that, and he said, I've got an idea to make paint light up. And then I said to him, yeah, okay, cool. Let me know how that works out.
You're not talking about glow sticks, are you here?
Yeah. It's like, that's not possible, right?
Right.
And then a year later, he pulled it off, and I was working with him in the background, because there's stuff that comes into this that's from all over the world, and so I was helping him out with calling up different suppliers, like, hey, if you give us a kilogram of that, we're going to be huge someday, and he just test it out. And we've got this research project that we've got going on.
So when you say control, literally on like a light switch?
Yeah. So here I have I have a prop here for us. So this is a helmet. This is a bike helmet that we've modified in no other way than painting, right? And you can see you can still wear it. And I can wear it on my head if I wanted to. But the paint is on the outside, and so when I put the switch that I've had on the inside of this thing, it actually produces light. And it's basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to transform the lighting industry with this.
So the paint is producing that light?
The paint is producing the light.
The chemicals in the paint?
The chemicals in the paint. So if you can see back here, there's a couple of little wires on the back of it that are wired into the helmet itself.
Okay.
Then we just have a piece of electronics here that is controlling the electricity to it. And there's obviously a couple of batteries in here as well.
Right.
But now we have the ability to paint light.
You paint light, and you're obviously, the obvious is you're getting rid of the space that a bulb would take up.
That's correct.
Right? So, I mean, you keep the fit, you keep the aerodynamics, you keep all that down.
Well, that's exactly right.
All the costs down as well.
So if you look at this, we have modified this helmet in no other way. So to put light in there with LEDs or traditional bulbs, you'd have to route out the different pathways in there.
And it's not cost effective. It'd probably be a very expensive helmet.
Exactly. From an engineering perspective, this makes life a lot easier. And so anything that you can paint you can make.
Well, that's what I was about to ask. Are there limitations to the object? I mean,
not really. It has to be solid.
What's the what are some of the most common items that you guys light up?
Cars, motorcycles, and custom things that people do. We've done some really fun projects. We did a car for Lexus that we painted 50 different fields on the outside of it, and basically we put a heart rate monitor on the driver, and you can actually see the driver's heart rate on the side of the car.
That's cool. That's cool stuff.
Right. So yes, we've gone to a complete channel sales strategy at this point. In fact, we really want to just become an IP company because we have manufacturing partners that work with us as well.
So it's just an OEM, is essentially. You would OEM it? Or,
exactly.
Yeah,
well, we license, actually more of a licensing model.
Okay.
And you see that because you have just more things that you need to do. So we have distribution in 16 countries right now, and we have to manage all those individuals, and we have dozens of manufacturers that we're working with as well to drive our sales, because again, you know, we have different chunks in our sales strategy. When we become a large company, we'll have primary manufacturers that'll be incorporating our product into products like helmets, for example.
Yeah.
We manufacture helmets that produce light, manufacture cars that produce light, change all the lighting in an aircraft to something lighter and something that has a better form factor as well.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to transform it. We have the ability to make the light bulb obsolete.
Wow.
We have the ability to take anything that produces light and make it a paint.
Wow.
So you can paint a television on the side of your car if we do this right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the big hairy goal, right?
Yeah.
When we become a big company, we'll be there. Now what we've done is we've attracted a significant number of partners that are able to sell our product through distribution globally. We have stable global distribution at this point. We have a large manufacturing partner, Rust-Oleum, that's working with us to manufacture a high quality version of our paint.
Man, that's awesome.
Which is incredible. And so we're at the point where we have all the pieces in place, and we have all the structure in place, and we just have to turn on the jets to get to that next level, right?
Thank you for joining us today with Shawn Mastrian. We look forward to seeing you during our next C-Level chat.